Have you ever wondered how deep tech companies actually start? Well, we were too.
So in this podcast, we'll be interviewing scientists and entrepreneurs that have taken their ideas out of the lab and turned them into startups. I'm Antonia.
And I'm Christina, and this is Startup the Science.
This podcast is brought to you by INAM Berlin, the Innovation Network for Advanced Materials, bringing together the brightest minds in material science. Visit us at inam.berlin.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Startup the Science. Today's episode features another startup from our 2019 ADMACOM program. If you want to learn more about ADMACOM, the Advanced Materials Competition, you can go to www.inam.berlin/ADMACOM or have a listen to the last episode where I do a brief explanation of what ADMACOM is at the beginning of the episode. Today's episode is with the startup Thermulon. They are creating a high-performance, non-combustible insulation material, which is really cool. But what's also cool is that a little birdie named Antonia, my co-host, told me that Thermulon has been applying to some programs and talking with some investors, which ultimately might bring them to Berlin, knock on wood. We'll see how that goes and we'll keep you updated on their progress. But without further ado, here is Sam and Alex of Thermulon.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
This took you by surprise. Okay. Welcome to our podcast. So, Thermulon, huh? How do you pronounce Thermulon? I heard there are different versions.
There is the English Thermulon, the Irish.
Do the Irish.
Thermulon.
One of our favorites, really.
My favorite.
Christina, how do you say it in Japanese?
Oh gosh, it would be Thermulon.
Okay.
Thermulon.
That could be your next market.
Sounds Italian. Thermulon.
Thermulone.
As you can see, a very versatile name, as is the technology that it represents.
Nice
transition.
Well done.
So maybe we start by introducing yourselves as the people that you are first, and then we will talk about Thermulon.
Hi, I'm Sam. I started Thermulon back in February, really, when we first came up with the idea to make non-combustible high-performance building insulation materials. Before that, I was doing my PhD at Imperial College in organic chemistry, and I kind of postdoced around London a bit, and I was looking for how do I jump out of academia and do a science startup.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Sam. Nice to have you. And then we also have Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm here all the way from the great wide nation of Canada. And I'm a chemical engineer, and I have a lowly bachelor's in chemical engineering, which in Europe doesn't mean much. But I've worked a lot, and I was working in process scale-up and development in industry, and just decided I wanted to get on something that was more technology-focused and science. And so I met Sam, and that's how the journey began.
Aw. And we'll get to the story of how you guys met a bit later, because it's a good story. But before that, let's talk about Thermulon. So actually, let's go a step back. What is the problem that Thermulon is solving?
Yeah, so it really comes from changing regulation in the UK. Basically, at the moment, if you want to build a new tall building in the UK, your only option is to use mineral wool, which is doesn't set on fire, but it's very poor in terms of its thermal performance. It takes up a huge amount of floor space. You need 400 millimeters to meet the regulation. And the reason is because previously, where people used plastic insulation, because of a tragic fire, Grenfell Tower, back in 2017, all of that plastic material was banned. And so now the industry is searching for any material that can kind of have this non-combustible nature and is thermally high performance so they can save on floor space. And so that's where we came in and we thought, how do we make that material from scratch? How do we take niche chemical things like aerogels, which are very expensive at the moment, and how do we completely change their process from the chemistry up and optimize for scale and price? And so that was the starting point.
That's a good starting point. So really you came up with this idea only relatively recently, or was it years worth of work and it's come to this point now?
Super
how
quick.
recent is it?
No
Super
years at all. Actually, about 1 year. So actually I went to join the Deep Science Ventures Accelerator in London, and they have a very innovative approach, which is they assume that most people's first ideas are crap. And you should find
Probably
a problem.
A good assumption, yes.
And then you need to really focus on the problem, and then find, like, if the problem's good enough, you'll find 1,000 ideas to solve it. And so I came in looking at CO2 and the climate space and energy efficiency, and I went through everything from grid systems, energy storage, up conversion of CO2. Where can you start businesses that venture capital wants to invest in that are profitable and climate positive? And it's really difficult because CO2 holds no value and oil and gas is inherently cheap. No matter what anyone says, it's insanely cheap, and it funds every high energetic process in the world. And so that's when I started looking at buildings efficiency, energy efficiency, and I heard a fact the other day, 38% of the EU's energy, I think, or something, goes to heating homes and offices. And in the UK, that's around 25%, I think. So clearly, if you can improve the performance of insulation materials, you can have a huge effect on our CO2 output. And especially at the moment, there was this kind of opportunity to enter because of all this regulatory change in the UK. And so I was like, okay, this is a great space to enter. So that process, that scoping process was probably 6 months, about August to February. Is that 6 months?
So that's very clever. So you found the problem first, and then the solution and the technology came from that.
Yeah. So originally I was like, oh, how do we make insulation materials more sustainable and biodegradable and this sort of thing? And I went out and started trying to do like commercial traction market research quite early, and found everyone was just like, well, it sits in a wall for at least 100 years, ideally. You don't want it to biodegrade. And you're like, good point. And secondly, they're like, does it set on fire? And most biodegradable things were carbon-based, which means at some point it will set on fire. And so every time I just kept coming up to, does it set on fire? Does it set on fire? So from that early phase of like, how do we make sustainable materials? My assumption was biodegradable, and it completely switched to, no, there has to be it has to be non-combustible. It has to have this thermal performance, and we need to make at least 100,000 tons a year because the global insulation market is so big. And so there was like these metrics that I had, and I was like, okay, what are the materials that do this? And then that was a case of like scoping out those materials.
Okay, so you had the problem, you knew what the solution should do and what it should look like, more or less. So how did you then come up with the solution?
It was just a lot of kind of this flip-flopping between calling up academics, just like messaging people on LinkedIn, people in the industry, like absolutely just bombarding LinkedIn basically, and academic websites, and searching for materials. I was reading a lot about like, just keywords, nanoporous, microstructure, different things like this, kind of smashing those into Google, looking through, reading papers. I must have read well over 100 odd papers in aerogels, and before that, even more, like in general. So I was kind of like, originally, I didn't want to go and look into aerogel materials because they're like so heavily researched in the past, and there are commercial processes out there, and I wanted something completely different. But there just isn't really anything else like that can hit the cost criteria, even though aerogels struggle to do that. So like if you look at other materials that are out there that have this like non-combustible kind of ability to make tiny, tiny pores to be thermally insulating, there isn't much out there. Kind of, I was like, okay, well, it has to be aerogels. What's the problem with them? Why are they so expensive? And that was then a case of speaking to academics, understanding all of that from their perspective. So I was spoken to like 30 or 40 different academics from like PhDs and postdocs and professors, kind of understanding that whole process of making these materials, and then being like, okay, well, how do we systematically take the best bits of research, speak to people who have used these in industry and worked with these in industry, and then kind of systematically take this approach to make a new process that could finally hit like the cheap cost criteria needed to enter construction.
So that's amazing. So you've done a lot of research before you even started working on it to see what else was out there.
Yeah.
And collect bits and pieces of information from various sources and put everything together. And when does Alex come in to the picture? Well,
I was kind of from, I guess, probably April, maybe before, February, about February, March, we designed the process, and I was working with some advisors that I had that kind of come on board who'd worked in industry previously. So they worked with me to kind of design this process with their experience and what I'd done and how the chemistry should work. And then I was like, well, how much would it cost to make this if you built a plant? And I was like, how do you build a plant? And then I started looking at chemical engineering and I was like, oh, this is why it's a completely different subject. It's really hard. And I have no concept of any of it. And so I was like, well, I better find a co-founder that's a chemical engineer. And so I started again, like smashing LinkedIn, looking at like emailing departments, chemical engineering departments in the UK. And I was like, well, if I email them, I better put a job on Angel List. And the main reason was just to have a link so it was there and I could send it to different people. I didn't actually expect anything to come through Angel List.
And
then lo and behold, like an angel from heaven.
And that's why they call it Angel List.
Yeah, so, I mean, I had been working already in process engineering and scale-up, but I was sort of, I was looking around for something new, sort of like a startup space, quite technology and science-focused. But I definitely wasn't looking to start a company. Like, that was not on my radar whatsoever. And some friend had told me about Angel List because they said, oh, if you're looking to work in a startup and sort of new ideas, there's lots of stuff. And then I saw, new process engineering company, London, sounds interesting. Put my resume up there and, I figured I had something to add because, like Sam said, the whole industrial side is something that from academia, you don't always really understand, but I have a bit of both. I had done sort of like fuel cell development, R&D, and lately I'd been working in like heavy industrial chemical engineering. So I thought I had something to add, and I sent in my resume, and then, it was sort of just a phone call matchmaking process.
And next thing you know, you're a co-founder.
Exactly. I'd walk out sketchily of my office at lunch hour to go like call Sam, and I'd sit in the lobby of other buildings, and we'd have these phone conversations, and sort of over time, I guess I became convinced somehow that it was a good idea.
I slowly wore him down until, so it was kind of like, so I'd interview quite a few people, and I'd kind of, every time I'd be like, oh, you have a background in chemical engineering, I'm starting this company, we're doing this, and then I'd be like, have you ever thought about starting a company? They'd be like, no. They'd be like, might you be interested in starting a company? They'd be like, no. And I'm like, why have we spent 40 minutes talking? And that was like, with a lot of people just, it was difficult finding chemical engineers with an appetite for risk, which seems to be like they're few and far between.
I'd just like to add in that I was unaware of this, and I'm very pleased to hear that the reason I was chosen is because it was hard to find other people. Gives me a lot of confidence.
You thought you were just the only one that applied.
And there were obviously other good people. But I did like in that early stage when I first started looking, it was kind of boring. And so I started like very, very early on in conversation when I'd interview people, I'd be like, do you want to start a company? And if they're like, no, I'd be like, cool, cheers, bye. And then like we spoke to Alex and I'm like, do you want to start a company? He was like, I guess so, maybe, we'll see. And I was like, let's keep going and see how this goes. And then, like from early stage, he had a lot to say about like what he thought we could do and kind of giving the metrics. And he helped a lot we did a collaboration with Cranfield University to look at like plant design with a master's student. And he helped a lot there. And I was like, this guy clearly knows his shit and what he's talking about. And, comes at it from a different angle. I was like, he should come on board full time.
I think also the main thing was I said no to a lot of stuff, which I think a lot of people don't say when they're in like a job application process. Sam would be like, should we use this technology? I'd be like, no, that's a terrible idea.
And I'm like, perfect, that's exactly what I need.
You liked him anyway, that's nice.
Yeah. And so, we kept having these like early morning because of the time difference. It'd be like, Alex would get up at like 6 or something in the morning so that we could have like an hour Skype conversation and talk over different things before he went to work. And
like a beautiful long distance relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and then so we'd kind of agreed he would be coming to London, and we were still starting to sort out employment contracts and visa and what that looked like, and he'd become a co-founder with me. And then I got the call from Admicom.
Admicom.
And
sounds a bit like Thermulon.
Yeah. Thermulon at Admicom. And I was like, this is great. Like, it'd be great for Alex to come to this, like just like quit a job right now, just come, like, and it will allow him to catch up with the business really quickly. We get to like actually spend time together working on stuff, like really full pelt.
Share a hostel room. Except
That's
that
what
didn't
you get
happen.
when you come to Admicom.
And really like hash out our agenda and what we're going to do over the next 6 months.
Are you regretting this decision already, or was it a good idea?
Heavily regretting.
Oh, no.
It was a fantastic decision. So like, I don't know, I think it's gone really well so far.
Yeah, I think it's been great. I mean, for a blind date, like corporate blind date. I mean,
So we should say we're now at the almost end of Admicom.
Yeah.
You guys have been here for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think if you got along for 2 weeks, also sharing a hostel room.
But it was like the first time we met was in Berlin at Admicom. We'd never met in person before. So it was
Admicom does.
So romantic.
Brings people together. They met online and then
I would say though, I didn't realize how far along some of the other companies in Admicom are. And like, yeah, maybe we could discuss a little bit about that, about where we are with the project at the
yes,
moment.
that would be great. So obviously you are pretty early stage, but let's talk about how early stage and what your next steps are.
Yeah, so I guess, as I said, came up with this idea in February, kind of incorporated in April. We won a grant with COAST, it was called. It's a collaboration between Durham University and the Centre for Process Innovation up in the northeast of England. And they kind of have started the lab work. So that was, okay, we had this process. It was on a piece of paper. It seemed like it would be a good idea. We should probably go to a lab and check that it's a good idea. And because we're not a university spin-off, we don't have a natural home, which is great from like an IP perspective because it means we own everything. But from an actual doing things perspective, it makes it really, really tough because it's a chemistry project and we don't have anywhere to do chemistry. So at the moment we are building that proof of concept. So the first kind of results are in, the process makes aerogel powders as we hoped it would, but we haven't got much further than that. So the next kind of step is this optimization of the process. And then once we have kind of a process that we know chemically can make these materials, that's where Alex comes in.
Yeah, I'll just step in there. I mean, as far as optimizing, it's really optimizing for scale. You know, at a lab basis, the process produces the material, and there's a lot of there are a lot of processes out there that at a lab scale are quite interesting, but when you try to bring them to sort of metric ton per day status, there's a lot of kinks that you have to work out, and that's what we're raising funding for now, and that's what we're launching into, and I think it's gonna be really exciting.
And how long do you think this might take? So you still at this stage need to be in a lab so you can finalize that part, and then you'll go into scaling up. Yeah. How long do you think this process is going to be, and what kind of support maybe you might need along the way?
I mean, yeah, we need a couple more months in the lab just to also confirm sort of the properties of the material and the consistency. But I think where we are at now, that should be achievable quite quickly. And after that, yeah, we need to build a pilot plant. So that's where Sam and I literally need to get out the wrenches. I've worked on a couple pilot plants before. You usually start just sort of in the corner of a lab or kind of a low-scale industrial space and build it out of PVC and maybe a couple stainless steel reactors. And, you literally play around with it like a kid's machine or something. And try different parameters. And I think that process, sort of a year or maybe under a year, I think we can do it. A year would be sort of the standard for industry, but, given that it's us, I think 6 months.
I think you can do it faster.
Only 6? No,
I mean, not 6 months, but I think under a year, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're quite flexible in terms of where you would be based, right? Because we had conversations about maybe you coming to Berlin or staying in London. We would love it if you came to Berlin, of course. But what do you think is going to happen? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, from what I've found, we in August, Deep Science Ventures, the kind of accelerator program, they class themselves, they're like a venture builder. And so they also invest. So they invested 50,000 to help build the proof of concept. And I've already gone out there and started trying to speak to VCs and various different kind of funding. And people are really scared of CapEx, especially like in London at the moment. They're like, well, I would much prefer to invest in this new AI Tinder app that matches dogs with cats, because
That's a great idea for an app. Sorry, go on.
And so we're kind of in this thing of like, where is there funding for heavy capex projects? And, Germany has historically a strong chemical industry. There seems to be quite a lot of grants for early stage startups in Berlin. And so we're definitely it's a case of hedging our bets. We'll apply for grants in the UK. We're applying for things at the moment, but we might as well also be applying for grants in Germany and Berlin. To try and kick us through this first stage, because no one will invest until we're at that PVC pilot level, really, from what we've seen.
And I think also it's probably important to mention, from what I've seen from the environment of Berlin, it really seems like with the Adlershof space and sort of the way that other people have been talking, there's a real ecosystem where things are physically close together, which I think, even in this day and age where we talk about easy communication across, different countries, I think honestly having a lot of things in the same physical location just adds an advantage that you can't put a price on.
Yeah, definitely makes a difference.
I mean, definitely in Berlin, there's an easy path to scale, easier path to scale. Starting off in one of the universities, move to Adlershof, and then maybe outside to building a bigger industrial facility. And also links with some of the corporate VCs, that are mostly German-based.
Right. Only advantages. Everyone should move to Berlin.
Many of whom are going to be there on Tuesday, which we didn't know that we'd be meeting the head of the VC arm of BASF, Evonik, and Merck, I think, as well, which are kind of 3 out of the 5 largest chemical companies in Europe, and 3 out of the top 10 or 15 in the world. So, we're hotly awaiting that, and we're going to have to do some preparation.
We were discussing this week, or the last kind of 2 weeks, we're like, should we try and be on their radar? Should we try and keep away from some of the big chemical companies already? And we're like, I guess we're presenting to 3 of them, so that's made that decision for us.
So Tuesday is our Accelerators demo day. I guess this episode will probably air after that. So by then, you will already have signed contracts with these guys.
So if you go to Thermulon.com and there is no website.
It's because they shut us down. But we'd be very proud of that if that happened.
Or they buy you. Yeah, who knows? Let's see what happens Tuesday. We're all very excited. Let's talk a little bit about the rest of your team. So it's obviously the 2 of you. Is there anyone else involved in this project? Any other people you're working with?
Yeah, there is. We're looking at Roz, who was here for the last week or so. That was also a pretty quick story. I met her 3 weeks ago, and we had a coffee, and she was looking for business development roles in startups and funding. And I was like, hey, rogue suggestion. Do you want to just come to Berlin for 2.5 weeks? See how we get on. Call it like a job interview, or maybe we help each other.
Like a really long job interview.
I was like, you get to come to Berlin for 2.5 weeks. What's there to lose? We had so we met for the second time and hashed out a plan, and we were like, what are the pros? What are the cons? And we're like, we can't really see any cons. The worst that happens is
you don't get along.
We don't get along.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But we have got along. And it's gone really well, and I think we're looking to see how we can move that forward.
That's nice.
With her as on the kind of core team, and then we've also been building up kind of a set of advisors, some from ex-industry who have worked on aerogels kind of at an industrial level, both their synthesis and their kind of composition and formulation and engineering, as material engineering, and then also some professors in some of the bigger institutions as well who have a lot of experience in their process. Yeah, so I think we're very strong in terms of our advisory team.
Quite a team. So one of the things we ask most entrepreneurs that we invite on our podcast is, why do this at all? Why start a company? Most of you are scientists.
I'm a masochist.
Yeah, so that's a good reason. But what is the motivation, right? Why do it? It's risky business. It takes a long time. You might never get investment. I'm sure you will, but that could happen. So why? What drives you?
Shall I? Okay.
Both of you can answer this question. Not at the same time.
The concept of a normal job bores the fuck out of me.
All right.
Just to begin with.
The reality of a normal job bores the fuck out of me.
So really, it's fighting boredom.
Yeah. I mean, most jobs, you might, in the first few months, you learn a lot and then you kind of settle into it. And I think for me, the idea of starting something yourself has always been something I've wanted to do. And I'd probably have to give that credit to my dad, who started a company in the spare room of our house making books. He was a book designer. And so as growing up, he was just there as one person. And then now it's a company of 30 people. So I've kind of watched that grow as I've grown up. So that's been a big inspiration. And I've always been I'd love to do, make my own company and create something that's good for the world and does something positive. Yeah. And so that was one aspect of it. And then again, I think you just, the opportunity to start something and grow it and to have this huge impact has always really pushed me.
I think on my end, I worked in R&D for Air Liquide, who's an industrial gas company. I worked in R&D for Daimler as well, doing fuel cell research. And this isn't to criticize the R&D departments of those companies, because they do a lot of great work. But often the connection between the research arm of the company and the corporate arm is not great. And sometimes there isn't actually a direct business need for a lot of those things. And so I was interested in working on something that involved technology development, but where we had the financial and market pressure to really bring the best work out of us and make sure that we were always focused on something that was going to produce something that really was needed. And so I think that's what's so great about our project, is that we are at an early scale. There is a lot of work to do in terms of technology development and fundraising. But the potential for success is huge, both in terms of the process and just in terms of what it can bring to literally $1 billion industry. And I think Sam mentioned this as well, that people are scared because of the CapEx, but part of that is because the industries that chemical processes touch, span the entire globe. And these products are produced, like I said, in metric tons per day. So if you do make a significant innovation, you're going to have a truly global impact.
And I guess kind of coming back to R&D, I did my PhD for 4 years. I worked as a postdoc for a year in academia. And, academia can do amazing things, but creating actual products the market wants is useless. And so I was just so frustrating to be there producing something. I spent 4 years on my PhD, and I knew that it would never work after the first year on a commercial scale, right? And so that's academia in a nutshell. And I was like, I can't do this. I wanna create things. I wanna make new materials. I wanna create stuff that can have impact. But academia, there is no appetite for that in terms of speed. And so again, I was like, something that's market driven, something that is needed and that you can scale really quickly and fast.
And just a note to anyone listening out there, Thermulon still loves universities and large corporations. We'd love to talk to you.
We love everyone. But yeah, the speed at which you can do things in a startup is very different, and how practical things can be as opposed to theoretical. I guess in a more polite way. That's also how you...
Yes. Was I not
insulting any academics out there. All right. So guys, maybe to wrap it up, what is the dream? Where would you like to see Thermulon in how many years? 3 years, let's say. No? Fewer years, more years?
Time.
I was going to say 5.
5 years.
5
okay,
years.
5 years.
5 is good.
Is enough time.
It's been a large topic of discussion. I want us definitely to get to an industrial style plant that's producing on large quantities. I'm not sure I want to see us become a global insulation producer. I think Sam and I are entrepreneurs and innovators. I'm not sure we're commercial managers for billion-dollar global businesses. Maybe we are.
Yeah, we've had that conversation with a few startups in this space, whether you want to make a really good product or technology and then sort of exit and move on to the next thing that you'll invent, or whether you see yourselves as the managers of a big business based on this idea you have now.
I mean, yeah, you never say never, because I think there is the potential that if things are going well and we have the right advisors and we've built this kind of mini-scale industrial facility, if there's the commercial appetite to just go for it, I think that's definitely a possibility. But I think the more likely scenario is that we either exit or we team up with a large corporate. So go in with either a joint venture or something else. Because I think, just the backing to build, say, $100 million facility is is going to be very difficult on our own without the huge experience of a massive multinational conglomerate.
And I think that is the route that most companies like us go through. I've seen quite a few through my university and then also through a process engineering company I worked at in Vancouver that sort of supported startups through their own lab and development space, is that, either they join up with a major industrial partner or they become a technology licensor. I think for us, joining up with an industrial partner is the ideal situation and what I think is more likely to happen.
Well, we will be there to support you in case we can.
Something Marie from the High Tech Grundfund also said was, if you're at the point that you're building $100 or $200 million facilities, there are really not many companies that could buy you. So if as from an investment point of view, from someone else investing in you and they want to see where you're going to exit and how you're going to exit, if you go too far, you become
Too expensive.
And I guess you can IPO is the other option.
Yeah.
But
Plus, that way it gives us a chance to get going on our next brilliant idea.
Exactly. Move on to change the world some more.
absolutely.
All right. Any one big ask or a couple of big asks you would have in case anyone listening could help you? What are you looking for at the moment? Anything at all that you want? Money. If anyone has money to throw around.
Yeah, I think in the next
Or invest wisely,
3 months, we're going to be looking for angel investment in the kind of 250 to 300,000 to build this kind of mini lab scale PVC pipe.
I think we have a lot of
thing.
rich listeners out there, so.
And I think money as well, but also, like I mentioned, we are looking for a process technology scale-up ecosystem. So, we're looking at a couple options, both in the UK and in Germany at the moment. But anywhere where, we have open, low-scale industrial space and a lab nearby, a combination of academics and corporates nearby is really ideal.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, guys. It was lovely having you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Startup the Science with Thermulon. If you'd like to get in contact with them or learn more about them, go to thermulon.com. Links are in the description. Thanks for listening to Startup the Science.
If you like our show and want to know more about what we do, check out our website at inam.berlin.
And don't forget to leave us a review. Until next time.